Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide.
Hi there. Today we're really diving deep into something incredibly dark and complex.
Yeah, this one's heavy. We're looking at the Order of the Solar Temple, the OTS, specifically their catastrophic end in 1994.
It's a story that just spirals from this kind of esoteric fantasy
Mm.
right into, well, choreographed horror. It's chilling stuff.
Absolutely. We're talking about an event that stretched across three different locations, Quebec in Canada, and then two villages in Switzerland.
And the outcome, 53 deaths. That number includes children, which is just horrific.
But it wasn't, a straightforward mass suicide as it might have first seemed. The leaders called it the transit.
Right, the sort of euphemism they used. But behind that word lies a really grim reality. It was orchestrated violence, murder, alongside these induced suicides.
So that's our mission today, isn't it? To kind of peel back those layers, look at the sources, and understand what really happened.
Exactly. Cut through that term transit. Because the leaders, Joseph DeMambro and Luc Charest, they sold this idea of a voluntary spiritual trip, a journey to the stars, Sirius.
Seriously.
That was the claim. But the forensic evidence, the bodies, the crime scenes, they told a completely different story. Mass murder, poison, people shot. It was all meticulously planned to make this huge, dramatic final statement.
And the leaders themselves, what a pair. You've got Joseph DeMambro, older guy, a sotericist, a jeweler originally.
Yeah, and crucially, someone with a documented history of fraud, serious fraud. He was obsessed with luxury appearances.
Right. And then the other half of this equation, Luc Charest, younger, very charismatic, apparently quite handsome, a homeopathic doctor.
He was the front man, the public speaker. He had the eloquence DeMambro lacked, and importantly, he brought in the initial money. Bankroll the operation, really.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? These leaders living in luxury, completely different from the ascetic lives they pushed on their followers.
Absolutely. And then condemning those same followers
Yeah.
to this ritual sacrifice. It's deeply disturbing.
And the timeline is just so compressed and shocking. It kicks off with the Dutoit family murders in Quebec. That was September 30th, 1994.
Horrific start.
Mm.
And then, almost immediately after, just a couple of days later, October 2nd and 3rd, you have the main events, the so-called transits, happening in these Swiss villages, Cherry and Salvan.
We really need to understand how they built this belief system. How did it become so powerful that it could justify killing not just outsiders, but their own members, even children?
That's the core question. How did this esoteric framework lead to such brutal internal carnage?
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The OTS itself, founded in 1984. Right?
Like the official date, yeah. But the sources are clear. This wasn't some brand new ideology sprung from nowhere. It was very much an amalgamation. Eclectic doesn't quite cover it.
A real grab bag of ideas, it sounds like. What were they drawing on?
Oh, a lot. Primarily stuff popular in French-speaking esoteric circles. Neo-Templarism was huge for them.
The Knights Templar connection.
Exactly. Tapping into that whole mythos of this ancient secret order, holding hidden truths, preparing for a new age. Very powerful imagery.
And Rosicrucianism, too. I saw that mentioned. AMRC, specifically.
Yes, the ancient and mystical order Rosicrucius. DeMambro had a long history there. He joined AMR way back in 1956, even ran a lodge for a bit.
So he was steeped in that world. The secret societies, the initiations, the hierarchy.
Absolutely. Decades of experience. Which makes sense because the OTS itself grew out of an earlier group he started in 1978, the Golden Way Foundation.
Okay, the Golden Way. Was that like a precursor?
Sort of. It was more public-facing, offered lectures, introductions to their brand of Templarism. It was the funnel, really, leading towards the more secretive core that became the OTS.
So that structure was there from the start. Secretive, tiered, promising, hidden knowledge.
Definitely. That was the model. You get drawn in, initiated through levels, promised access to ancient wisdom, a special role in humanity's future. Classic initiatory society stuff, just taken to an extreme.
Now, looking at DeMambro and Charest, the leaders, it seems like their partnership was almost symbiotic, covering each other's weaknesses.
You could definitely say that.
Yeah.
DeMambro was considered the real leader, the spiritual core, a cosmic master, as he called himself.
Cosmic master, born in 1924, French esotericist, but with that fraud background.
Yes, and not just minor fraud. We're talking serious convictions,
Yeah.
including incredibly impersonating a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
That tells you a lot about his methods, right? Manipulation, false personas, control.
But apparently he wasn't a great speaker. The sources say he was kind of disastrous on video.
That's the paradox. reportedly quite awkward, stumbled through lectures, yet within the group he held absolute spiritual authority.
So the followers just projected brilliance onto him because he was supposed to be the cosmic master.
Precisely. They had already bought into the idea, invested in with these qualities. The actual delivery almost didn't matter, which is where Jure became essential.
Right, Jure was the smooth talker, the salesman.
He really was. Born 47, so younger. Very charismatic, and crucially, he had professional credibility as a homeopathic doctor. Plus, he initially funded the whole thing.
Bemambro picked him for his speaking skills, didn't he?
Explicitly. Jure was the main propagandist. He could give these long, impressive lectures, apparently for hours, drawing people in with talk about esoteric secrets and looming ecological disasters. He made it sound urgent and plausible.
It sounds like the perfect recipe for a cult leader duo. Yet, I was struck by how hard recruitment actually was for them.
Oh, incredibly difficult, despite Jure's charisma. There's this one example, a lecture he gave. Maybe 700 people showed up. Huge crowd,
Sounds successful.
you'd think. But out of those 700, only about 10 asked for more info. And 6 months later, only one person had actually joined the inner circle.
Wow, just one.
Yeah. The OTS never really had more than a few hundred core members worldwide. It shows how much effort it took to turn that initial interest into the total commitments Dimambro demanded. Financial, ideological, everything.
And maybe that difficulty, combined with other problems, pushed them towards this radical shift in doctrine, from survivalism to the transit.
That shift seems directly linked, yeah. It really took hold around 1990, 1991. And it came right after major internal disagreements and people starting to leave.
So what was the original plan before the transit idea?
Initially, it was much more about earthly survival, millennialism, but focused on sticking around. They wanted to gather the elect, the chosen few, onto what they called an ark of refuge.
Like their farm in Canada, the one on the granite plate.
Exactly. That purchase was strategic. They believed the granite would protect them from ecological catastrophes. The plan was to ride out the apocalypse and then emerge to lead the new age of Aquarius, right here on Earth.
So a complete U-turn then, from inheriting the Earth to needing to leave it entirely.
A fundamental reversal.
Right.
But you see, when the group started fraying, when members left, when the world wasn't ending quite on schedule, the narrative had to adapt drastically.
To justify the leader's authority and maybe their failures.
Precisely. Dimambro introduced the transit. It reframed everything. Failure became a choice. Destruction became a voluntary departure to another dimension.
Through magic fire, wasn't it? A spiritual voyage.
Yes, via ritual fire to Sirius. Though sometimes Jupiter or Venus got mentioned too, is a bit vague. The key thing was members had to be ready. Ready to go on incredibly short notice. It was the ultimate out, the ultimate way to explain away any future collapse.
Okay, so this idea of the transit wasn't just talk. It seems like it went hand in hand with tightening control inside the group, this Chinese box structure you mentioned.
Yes, that structure became crucial. It was all about layers of secrecy and, frankly, financial control. On the outside, you had these public clubs, Amanamenta or Chedia.
The ones offering health seminars with Jure.
Exactly. They were the friendly face, the recruitment funnel. If you showed enough interest, enough commitment, you might get invited deeper. To the secret core group, the International Order of Chivalry Solar Tradition, which became the OTS.
And inside that, there were more levels.
3 main degrees of initiation. The Frère de Parvis, the Chevalier de l'Alliance, and the top level, the Frère des Temps Anciens. But the real key to holding it all together, especially Dimambro's authority, was, well, it was pure stagecraft, technological fakery.
This is the really dark, manipulative part, isn't it? Maintaining his cosmic master status through illusion.
It's the absolute core of the deception. Dimambro knew his own charisma wasn't enough. So they built these secret sanctuaries, often underground, hidden behind false walls in their chalets and farms.
And this wasn't just simple tricks.
No. This was sophisticated stuff for the time. They used lasers, 35mm slide projections, elaborate sound effects. There are even reports of hallucinogenic drugs being slipped into drinks during ceremonies, all designed to simulate divine encounters.
So people would actually see things, feel things.
That was the goal, to provide proof of Dimambro's connection to higher powers. Maybe a hologram of the Holy Grail would appear, or figures representing the Masters of the White Brotherhood. These supposed ancient guiding spirits would manifest and speak through Dimambro.
Wow. And gold dust falling from the ceiling.
Sometimes, yeah. A demonstration of spiritual wealth, supposedly. Imagine witnessing that, believing it's real. The emotional impact must have been immense. It reinforced their belief, their financial contributions, everything.
But like you said, stagecraft relies on keeping the secrets. And that illusion eventually shattered, didn't it?
It couldn't last forever, especially not when some members were the ones operating the equipment. Around the late 80s, early 90s, the truth started leaking out. People discovered the phenomena were faked.
And the person running the special effects was Tony DuToit, the man they later killed.
The very same. He was close to DiMambro, knew all the secrets, how the tricks worked. His knowledge and him leaving was a massive blow. It led to a wave of disillusionment. Key members started defecting around 1990.
Including DiMambro's own son. That's huge.
A massive indictment. His son, who was maybe groomed to take over, left and publicly called his father a shark, exposed the trickery. That collapse, that loss of face, forced DiMambro's hand. Well, if he couldn't maintain authority through faked miracles anymore, he had to clamp down harder. Double down on control, on fear, on isolation. And that feeds directly into the transit doctrine becoming central.
Let's talk about that control. How did they manipulate the members who stayed?
It became total. Classic cult tactics, really.
Yeah.
Intense love bombing for new recruits, making them feel special, chosen, followed quickly by enforced isolation from family and friends. They called it defamilialization.
Breaking down their old support systems.
Exactly. And then rebuilding their identity within the order, giving them new spiritual names, new roles. Jouret suddenly becomes the reincarnation of Bernard de Clairvaux, the medieval Templar figure. It kept people off balance, dependent.
And this extreme focus on purity that covered everything.
Everything. Purity was central to their whole apocalyptic worldview. Protecting the group's boundaries, it manifested in really strange ways, like their attitude towards money.
Despite the leaders living lavishly.
Right. The members were encouraged towards these extreme ascetic displays. Susan Palmer calls them potlatch-like transactions.
Potlatch, like deliberately getting rid of wealth.
Kind of. Members would be encouraged to buy something incredibly expensive, a yacht, a luxury car, and then immediately sell it at a huge loss. Or just give it away.
Why?
To demonstrate their spiritual detachment from the material world, their purity. Of course, it also made them financially vulnerable and more dependent on the order.
A twisted kind of virtue signaling. But the dark side of this purity obsession, the rituals against people deemed impure, like soul-sucking.
That was terrifying.
Yeah.
A mechanism for enforcing conformity and punishing dissent. If someone was seen as an obstacle, like Jouret's own wife apparently was at one point.
Ma'am Jouret, she was an obstacle.
According to the group's logic, yes.
Yes.
An obstacle to Jouret's cosmic mission. So they subjected her to this ritual psychic attack, this soul-sucking. It's essentially a campaign of psychological terror and ostracism.
Designed to break her or anyone who stepped out of line?
Absolutely. It sent a clear message. Dissent would not be tolerated. Question the leadership, question the purity, and you become the enemy within. The stakes were incredibly high. So by 1993, things are already internally fragile because of the exposed fakery, but then the outside world starts applying pressure. And that's when the paranoia really spikes and this idea of vengeance starts to take shape.
The Quebec gun scandal seems like a huge turning point. March 1993.
Definitely. That really blew their cover. Jouret and some other members got arrested trying to buy illegal guns, semi-automatics with silencers.
Why? What were they planning?
They claimed it was for security, to protect their Canadian Ark of Refuge. In the end, the legal penalty was minor, just a $1,000 fine each. But the psychological impact on the leaders was immense.
What triggered intense paranoia?
Off the charts. They became convinced they were under constant surveillance, phones tapped, being watched by authorities, by enemies, a vast conspiracy against them.
And the leaders probably fanned those flames, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even though official surveillance might have been brief, they fostered this belief that it was ongoing. This siege mentality became critical. It justified everything. The world is against us, trying to destroy the pure. Therefore, we must act.
And then former members started speaking out, adding fuel to the fire. The anti-cult movement got involved.
Exactly. People like Rosemary Klaus, who'd left and actually managed to sue them to get her investment back, about $150,000. She went public.
That must have hurt DiMambro hitting his finances in secrecy.
It led to media attention. Official investigations starting up in places like Quebec and Martinique.
Yeah.
The walls were closing in. His control, his luxury lifestyle, it was all under threat.
And the internal recordings from around this time, 1994, they show a real shift in thinking, don't they? From just escaping to making a statement, a violent one.
Chillingly clear. There's this tape from spring '94 where DiMambro's actually complaining about the Branch Davidian tragedy in Waco, Texas.
Complaining?
He literally says something like, Waco beat us to the punch. But then he adds, what we'll do will be even more spectacular.
Wow. So it wasn't about spiritual release anymore. It was about notoriety, media impact.
It seems that way. It became about leaving a mark and about revenge. He became obsessed with punishing the traitors.
The former members who spoke out.
Yes. Those who had, in his view, harmed the Rosy Cross, their mystical symbol. He talked about leaving ashes, leaving nothing to the bastards who betrayed us.
He sounded desperate.
Deeply distressed, yes. The tapes show him saying life was intolerable, that they were rejected by the whole world, even by the earth itself. The transit became less about ascension and more about, well, a final fiery rejection of the world that rejected them. Scorched earth.
And this desire for vengeance zeroes in on one specific target, the Dutoit family. Why them?
They embodied everything that threatened Dimambro. Tony Dutoit, as we said, knew the secrets. He knew the magic was fake. His betrayal cut right to the core of Dimambro's authority.
And his wife, Nikki, and their child.
Nikki Dutoit conceived and had a son, Christopher Emmanuel. This was a huge problem for Dimambro.
Why specifically?
Firstly, Dimambro had apparently forbidden Nikki from having more children after a miscarriage. So having the baby was direct defiance. But the bigger issue was the child's name and perceived role.
Emmanuel, like Dimambro's own daughter.
Exactly. Dimambro's daughter was named Manuel, and he viewed her as this sacred cosmic child, an avatar. He saw the Dutoit baby, Christopher Emmanuel, perhaps because of the name, perhaps because of the defiance, as the Antichrist.
The Antichrist, seriously.
That seems to have been his belief, a cosmic threat to his own messianic daughter and the order's purity. And this Antichrist, in his mind, had to be eliminated, ritually, before the order could make its own transit.
So the murders weren't just lashing out. They were calculated ritualistic acts, starting with the Dutoits in Canada, September 30th.
It was the opening salvo, ordered by Dimambro, carried out by 3 loyalists, Joel Egger, Jerry Janud, and Dominique Belleton. And the violence. It was horrifyingly specific. Symbolic.
Reflecting those twisted grievances you mentioned.
Exactly. The sources detail the wounds with chilling precision. Antonia Dutoit, the technical traitor, 50 stab wounds.
50?
50. Nikki Dutoit received 14 knife blows, and they were targeted. 4 to the throat, supposedly to stop her having children in a future life. 8 in the back for justice, 2 to her breast for nursing the Antichrist.
It's just medieval in its brutality and symbolism. And the baby, Christopher Emmanuel.
Killed with a single stab wound to the heart. Dimambro believed this was the only way to kill the Antichrist. And then, found lodged in his chest, was a pied de bois symbolique, a symbolic wooden stake.
A stake through the heart, like a vampire myth.
It drives home just how gothic and personalized this perceived cosmic battle had become. Killing the Dutoits removed the blockage, paving the way for the main event. Oh, and we should mention Jerry Janud and his wife, who helped rig the fire system there. They also died in that first fire in Morin Heights.
Okay, so the vengeance part is done. Then the focus shifts immediately to Switzerland for the core group's transit.
Right. The night of October 2nd into 3rd. The Cheery Massacre. 23 people killed there.
And many of these were the ones seen as traitors or weak.
That's the understanding, yes.
Yeah?
Killed mainly by gunshot. Egger and Jouret were the shooters, possibly others too. They found 52 spent shells at the scene. This was mass murder, staged as ritual.
Staged how? What did the investigators find?
It was incredibly elaborate. The bodies were in a secret underground room, a crypt really, hidden behind a panel. 8 of them were arranged in a circle, radiating outwards like spokes on a wheel.
Dressed in ritual robes?
Yes, wearing silk capes, white, black, or gold. The room itself was filled with esoteric symbols, swords, crosses, a chalice. But the forensic details tell a different story.
What did they show?
Many victims had their hands tied. Clear signs of struggle in some cases. Most had plastic bags over their heads and multiple gunshot wounds, often 3 or more, mostly to the head. This wasn't a peaceful departure. It was an execution, dressed up.
A horrifying spectacle, which contrasts sharply with the final scene in Salvan, doesn't it? That seemed more like the planned mass suicide of the inner circle.
Salvan on October 5th seems closer to that, yes. That's where Dimambro and Jouret died, along with 25 of the most devoted followers. Dimambro's wife, key members.
And the method there was different. Mostly poison.
Primarily poison injections, yes, reportedly administered by medical people within the group, and likely some voluntary suicides mixed in. Though even there's a question mark over Dimambro's son, Eli. He was found dead, but sort of separate, raising suspicion he might have been killed as a last-minute traitor.
And they were aiming for a specific number of deaths, weren't they? For symbolic reasons.
Exactly 54. That was the magic number.
Yeah.
It linked back to 54 Knights Templar who were burned at the stake centuries ago. Achieving that number was supposed to grant them some kind of immediate spiritual connection.
But they didn't quite make it.
No, they ended up with 53 known deaths because one person escaped.
Jerry Huguenin.
Yes, he was there near Salvan, met DiMambro that day. But he got spooked. Sensed something was very wrong. Noticed flammable materials. Smelled gasoline. He fled just before it all went down. His escape broke their perfect symbolic number.
So the final act was meant to be wiping the slate clean, destroying all the evidence with fire.
That was the plan. A sophisticated, coordinated arson attempt across multiple properties. Joel Egger, before he died, apparently triggered the remote systems using pre-programmed phone calls around midnight.
And these were complex systems.
Very. Timers, phones acting as triggers, heating elements, gasoline, benzene, all rigged up in the chalets and farms in both Switzerland and Canada, designed to go up in flames simultaneously.
But the technology failed them in the end. The same technology DiMambro used for his illusions.
Kind of ironic, isn't it? Several of the ignition systems malfunctioned. Crucially, the one at the main Cheery site didn't fully destroy the place.
Which meant evidence survived.
A huge amount. Documents, computers, hundreds of audio and videotapes. The failure of the fires actually gave investigators this incredible, unprecedented window into the Order's inner world, their finances, their beliefs, DiMambro's manipulations. It completely undermined their plan to control the narrative.
It's speaking of controlling the narrative. Even in his final moments, DiMambro was trying to rewrite history, blaming Jure.
Absolutely. They found a fifth, shorter note hidden in his chalet, written right before the end. In it, he completely blames Jure for the violence at Cheery, calls his actions barbaric, incompetent, and aberrant, claims it wasn't in line with the Order's true ethics.
So, painting himself as the pure mystic,
Yeah.
betrayed by his violent second-in-command.
Right to the very end, a final act of self-serving manipulation, trying to sanitize his own legacy.
So the fires go out, the bodies are discovered, October 4th, 5th, 1994. And this kicks off the investigation, particularly in Switzerland, which became pretty controversial, didn't it?
Hugely controversial. The Swiss investigation started at Cheery on October 5th, after the fire was reported. The magistrate, André Piller, arrived. They found the first body, Albert Giacobino, plastic bag over his head, near a failed fire-starting device.
And then they found the hidden room.
Yeah, they searched the farmhouse, found documents mentioning the Order, and then, in the early hours, discovered the secret door, the corridor, and the main chamber, with all the bodies arranged in that circle. The scale only became clear later when news came from Salvan about the other 25 bodies.
But the immediate decisions made by Piller caused a lot of problems.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Right from day one, Magistrate Piller pushed the theory of mass suicide. This was despite the evidence already emerging, people bound, multiple gunshot wounds that pointed strongly towards murder.
Okay, maybe an initial assumption, but then he did something much worse.
2 days later, incredibly, he ordered the complete destruction of the underground sanctuary at Cheery. Bulldozed it.
Destroyed the primary crime scene.
His official reason was, well, flimsy at best. He said it was to not shock believers or attract the curious, and because he was convinced no outsiders were involved.
That just sounds unbelievable.
It fueled conspiracy theories instantly. People started asking, was it incompetence? Or was it a cover-up? Were powerful people involved? Destroying the scene like that just created decades of suspicion.
So while the physical evidence was being compromised, the leaders had already set their own narrative in motion through letters.
Yes, the Testament. They prepared these extensive letters, 4 of them, and mailed them out to around 300 people just before the end.
Who did they send them to?
A real mix. Media outlets, academics who studied cults, even world leaders like Bill Clinton and the French Interior Minister Charles Pasqua.
And what did these testaments say?
They laid out the justification, calling the event a transit, explicitly stating it was in no way a suicide in the human sense. They blamed persecution by a global conspiracy, the New World Order, and they encouraged any remaining members to follow them, to also transit.
It was their attempt to write their own history.
Absolutely. Even the mailing details were coded. The envelopes had fake return addresses like Depart or Transit Corps, mailed from 33 Golden Strasse in Zurich, referencing the Golden Way and the Rosicrucian 33 Elder Brothers. It was a final performance designed to ensure their version of events survived.
But the most horrifying part is, it didn't end there. The ideology, the belief system, it outlived the leaders.
That's perhaps the most chilling aspect. Di Mambro and Jaret were dead, definitively. But their doctrine didn't die with them.
There were more deaths later.
Yes. Over a year later, December 1995, on the winter solstice, 16 more people died near Grenoble in France, including 3 children. Another murder-suicide ritual.
Arranged in a star formation, I read, like at Cherry.
Exactly. A clear continuation of the same ritual practice, and then again in 1997.
Where was that?
Quebec, Canada again. 5 more members died during the spring equinox. This group actually included the ex-husband of Rosemary Klaus.
The woman who denounced them and got her money back.
The very same. It shows just how potent Di Mambro's invented theology remained for the surviving believers. They couldn't let go of the idea that death was the path to salvation, even years after the architect of that idea was gone.
So what was the wider impact of all this, beyond the tragedy for the victims and their families?
It catapulted the OTS from obscurity to infamy overnight. Huge media storm. But more significantly, it really galvanized the anti-cult movement in Europe.
Governments took notice.
Very much so. France and Belgium, in particular, launched official inquiries, issued reports on the dangers of what they termed cults or sects. The Solar Temple became the go-to example globally of a potential for extreme violence within these closed, high-demand apocalyptic groups, especially when their leadership feels threatened. #tagoutro.
Wow. It's been, a really disturbing journey through this material. It shows how this mix of esoteric belief, manipulation, and desperation can just explode into unimaginable violence.
It really was a perfect storm, wasn't it? The sources point to those 4 key things coming together. You had the ideology itself, the belief in the transit, then the external pressure police, media, then the internal collapse of the defections, the loss of faith after the fakery was revealed.
And finally, the leader himself, Di Mambro, his authority crumbling, his health failing.
Exactly. His whole reality was falling apart. So the transit became his last, desperate, and incredibly violent statement to a world he felt had utterly rejected him.
And the truly chilling part, as we discussed, is that for some people, that statement resonated. The belief system survived.
It did. Even with the founders dead, the ideas were powerful enough to lead others down that same path years later. Which leaves us, and you, the listener, with a really unsettling thought, doesn't it?
What's that?
What does it tell us about our search for meaning, for belonging, when a lie, a completely fabricated doctrine from a cosmic master who is a proven fraud, can outlive the liar and still hold the power to compel people toward self-destruction?
A deeply troubling question to end on.
Indeed.
Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussion, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.